Today we're going to talk about the idea of Nikolai being inside the Dark Aether storyline. And this isn't the first time that the idea of Nikolai somehow existing in this new storyline has popped up. There's been previous theories in the past that are probably not true, but this time around it seems that we have a lot more evidence for at least one version of him existing in this Dark Aether storyline. And where we get this information from is from a brand new radio transmission on at least the Omega side from Mauer to Toten. And where this radio transmission comes from is from somebody that I think would be the last person anybody would think of when it comes to a connection to Nikolai. And who that is none other than Gorev. Gorev, as you guys probably know, is high up in Omega. He's probably just second to Kravchenko himself. But of course, what I want to do for you guys now is actually play the radio, or at least the part that is relevant to what we are going to talk about. Now, if you guys want to listen to this radio in its entirety and really all the other radios, then I've made a video playing them all and it'll be linked on screen right now. But regardless, right now I'm going to play for you just the important parts to this video.
I do not believe we have had formal introduction. I am Gorev. No first or last name, just Gorev. Want to know secret? Gorev is code name. Family name is... well, I do not want the attention. Grandfather's brother, he was famous soldier in Stalingrad.
So in this radio, we hear that Gorev actually isn't Gorev's real name. It's just a code name. And the reason why he is using Gorev instead of his real name like literally everybody else is because he's trying to hide his identity, because what we learn is that his grandfather's brother was a famous soldier in Stalingrad. And this is incredibly interesting because as we may know that there's not that many people that exist in either the zombie storyline, whether it's this one, or the Aether storyline, which it does have connections to, or even the Black Ops campaign story, because as we know, this Dark Aether story is a mixture of the zombie story and the campaign story. So we have two different areas to look at for a famous soldier from Stalingrad. And the first one that you may think of, at least from the Black Ops campaign story side of things, is none other than Viktor Reznov, or I always get mixed up with Ravnov and Reznov, because either way, regardless, he, as you guys may know from, I believe, the World at War campaign, was a soldier in Stalingrad and did some crazy stuff, of course, killing some Nazi general and all that good stuff, and I would imagine that would make you quite famous. And this one seems to work out at first, and it seems to make sense with the current story because, as I mentioned, that in this story, the Dark Aether story, there is a strong connection to the campaign. But there's a big problem with connecting the Gorev and his great-grandfather's brother to Reznov, or being Reznov, excuse me. And the reason why that's difficult to do is because we never have mention of Reznov having a brother. That just hasn't been a thing that we have heard of. And this, of course, leaves us to look for other answers elsewhere, and this brings us, instead of the campaign story side of stuff, into the zombie side of stuff. And I'm sure you guys all know where I'm going with this. The only other hero of Stalingrad that we know of was none other than Nikolai Belinsky himself. And this, of course, is heard multiple times. In fact, the first time we hear about this is back in World at War Zombies, that Nikolai was a hero of the World War II, more specifically in Stalingrad. And this is seen again inside the map Gorod Krovi, where, of course, this time around it's not very traditional type of war. There's dragons, mechs, and all that stuff, but regardless, at the end of that, he probably would have became a hero of Stalingrad. And this, of course, would leave Nikolai as an option to be Gorev's grandfather's brother. But of course, we have to then answer the question that seems to have eliminated Reznov, and that is, does Nikolai even have a brother? Well, the thing is that we actually heard mention of Nikolai having a brother a really long time ago. This was back in Black Ops 1. It was just a random quote from Ultimus Nikolai where he just randomly mentions that his brother was homeless and broke, and that's all he ever said about him. That was just it. And the thing is, it's kind of hard to believe anything Ultimus Nikolai says because, as we know, he's kind of a drunk and all that stuff, and so he makes up a lot of stories because he hears about the multiple wives that he never had and all that stuff, so we don't know how, I guess, reliable this, source really is. But that wasn't the only time Nikolai's brother was ever mentioned, and in fact, he was mentioned 2 times after this. And the next time he was mentioned had to take us all the way to Black Ops 3 Revelations, and this was actually a wisp from Dr. Monty to Nikolai.
Nikolai once had a brother. I don't know why he forgot him.
So, as you guys heard there, this of course confirmed that Nikolai had a brother. Now, it is interesting what is mentioned here because up until this point in the story, Nikolai's brother hadn't really been important or relevant at all. But one thing that Monty pointed out is that for some reason Nikolai forgot him. And that is incredibly interesting, and if we think what is going on from this Gorev radio is true, which we'll get to, it may leave open an entire door that we could go down sometime in the future. But either way, this at least confirms the existence of Nikolai's brother. But as I mentioned, there was one last time before this that Nikolai's brother was mentioned, and believe it or not, it was in none other than the original Aether storyline's timeline. And what it said was, on December 9th, 1942, Nikolai's brother was also killed in the Battle of Stalingrad. So again, this is throwing a lot of lore into Nikolai's brother because for some reason Nikolai forgot about him. Then also it seems like he died in the Battle of Stalingrad, but those are different subjects for maybe some other day. But at least for now, this does confirm the existence of Nikolai's brother, and to me this leaves us with our only realistic answer that we could answer to who is Gorev's grandfather's brother. And to me, it seems more than likely that is none other than Nikolai Belinsky himself. But where does that leave us anyways, if this is all true? I mean, cool, Gorev's great uncle is Nikolai Belinsky. Cool story, now what? Well, it actually is really interesting to me because if this is all true, this means that there are different versions of our original crew existing in this timeline. I mean, they might be long dead by now because, I mean, if Nikolai was a great soldier back in Stalingrad in the 40s, you have to keep in mind that the story is currently taking place in the 80s, so 40 years later, he's probably kind of old. But regardless, it still means that they existed in this timeline. That means that there was a Takio out there was a Dempsey out there, and there was a Nikolai out there. And this kind of like going back to that original, I guess, Toten ending of the original Aether storyline, where we hear the wishes of all of our different versions of our characters. And it makes me question, is that what happens to them when they end up living their lives in this dark Aether universe or storyline? Do they live out the lives that they wanted to, or what exactly happened to them? I mean, it'd be cool to find out. Now, of course, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to really see these characters pop up again, because I just don't think it's very likely that we'll see, like, Dempsey, Nikolai, and Takio ever again in the story, outside of maybe a little Easter egg similar to this, or maybe a gravestone or something like that that we may see along the way. But regardless, it is still interesting to see that possibly that our original crew actually lived out normal lives in this version of the universe. But of course, there's one last thing I want to leave this off on, because it is interesting to me that this possibly could be the case. And this is all connected to Eddie and Samantha, because as you guys know, they are the only two people to come from the original Aether universe into this one. So does that mean there are other versions, or I guess the original Dark Aether versions of Samantha and Eddie in this universe, or did they just take their place or something like that? Because if everybody else got a new version of them that lived normal lives, why didn't Samantha and Eddie? I mean, they could just say, well, they were brought over, so they didn't need to, or something like that. But overall, it's something to just at least keep an eye on, because potentially there could be another Samantha and another Eddie living out their best lives inside this universe. But that's really all I wanted to, I guess, leave you guys off on with that little thought. But regardless, that's about it for this video. I'd love to hear what you guys think of the possibility of Gorev's great uncle being Nikolai Belinsky. What do you guys think about that? And if you do agree with the idea, what do you think it will ever mean for the story? Is it always just going to be this, you know, cool story that you heard in the background, or is it going to be something important sometime in the future? I'd love to hear what you guys think about that down in the comments. But regardless, that's going to wrap it up for me. If you guys did enjoy this video and you found it entertaining in any way, shape, and form, definitely do all the normal YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, bell, share, and all that great stuff. But I'm going to go, and I'll catch you guys next stream video, or the heck it may be, and laters, guys.